Hello, and welcome to the podcast where friends discuss environmental policies from around the planet.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Planet Policy Pals podcast. I'm Ajwa, and I'm joined here by my fellow co-host and lovely friend, Ala. How you doing?
Girl, I'm okay. Just surviving. You know, living.
It's okay.
But anyway, so this is going to be like you'll see. You guys will see with this episode. But I just wanted to give us a little bit of good news to preface the entire episode. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in March, the EPA was going to set stricter GHG emissions and do a bunch of stuff that they've never done in the US. So the Supreme Court, when they were on that bullshit and they were just on everybody, they decided that they were also going to cap the EPA's ability to set a capstone on carbon emissions in states. So anyway, with Biden's new Inflation Reduction Act, where he snuck in some climate stuff, yes, Biden, the EPA can now actually make some real changes. So they announced that they're going to go ahead and do that, and they just announced that yesterday. So something good to start off with. I just wanted to say that.
No, that's great because the rest of it is anything but good because you're going to hate us because we're going to be shitting a lot on people. So just a heads up, a disclaimer if you must.
Hey, Adra, guys, don't hate me.
Anyway, the news of the day, as you all must have heard, and since we put out a textile episode last week, we must talk about the owner of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, and his family, who gave their entire company away to a trust fund. Can you imagine? And no, before you pointed out, they must have done it for tax benefits. No, they did not, because they gave 98% of it to a trust fund that apparently there's this law that if a trust fund makes political donations, they actually don't get a tax benefit on it. So yeah, I mean, the other 2%, they did get some tax benefit on it because that was just so they can make sure that that their profits are going to environmental organizations. And that is the 2%. And they did get some tax benefit from it, but 98% of it, they did not. The $3 billion valued company did not get that kind of tax that you think they did. And also, the reason why he did it, because he was like, you know what? I actually never wanted to be a businessman. I started this because he's like this avid rock climber, and he just realized that there wasn't enough apparel for people like him to actually, do what they love. So he started this company, and he has a really interesting take on capitalism, and that's why, I love him, and Allah probably doesn't.
First of all, I have no problem with this man. I love Patagonia, and I'm not like anti-socialism either. I just don't believe that either extreme can work.
I agree with you.
And mind you, I will repeat this. I am yet to see a functional, fully socialist government emerge. You know why? Human beings suck. You don't want to admit it, but everybody wants to be a little bit successful. Everybody wants to be comfortable, like really comfortable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And it sucks that we live in a world where to be comfortable, you have to be rich. That is a real problem here, but that's not what this episode about. And neither is this environmental news about. But anyway, like, these people are honestly amazing, and they did not take it public like most companies do. And the children, by the way, you're wondering, why didn't the children just take it? The children were like, nah, bro, we share our dad's morals. We don't want any part of that company. And they are actually, doing some good. And they have decided that some $100 million a year will be used to combat climate change because that's what their profits will be. And they will protect undeveloped land around the globe. And hopefully, Mr. Chouinard definitely hopes that this will kind of set a pattern with billionaires and the way that they spread their wealth for tax benefits. I really hope this really is a good thing. So, this is a pretty big deal. And, a lot of people actually are calling it greenwashing. So what do you think, given all that you've heard about Patagonia, do you think they're actually a sustainable brand themselves?
I think, all signs point to Patagonia being a fairly reliable company. In 2019, they received Ethical Consumer's Best rating for supply chain management, and they got a middle rating for cotton sourcing, which isn't great, but cotton is hard to source sustainably. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Personally, I don't have a problem with this company. They have good clothes. They're committed to improvement, the environment. They're always giving away tons of money for some reason. Not my deal, but, good for them. And all the taxes that they saved when Trump cut taxes, I just want to point out it was mostly for rich people. In 2017, they saved $10 million, and they donate those to climate change efforts.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly. Even when they found down in their clothing, which we don't really care for down, it has some issues. Maybe we'll cover it another time. They traced it back to birds that were not forced fed or maltreated. So the birds had pretty decent lives, all things considered. I don't know. I see no reason to start doubting them now. They have a good track record, unless you're hating or something, which if you're a hater, bruh, do you. Hate in peace. I ain't gonna hold you.
Yeah, hate in peace. But anyway, thank you for that, Ala. I hope that kind of cleared some misconceptions around this company. What is our today's episode about? Well, speaking of haters, I feel like we're going to accumulate some of them. We are going to talk about the celebrity jet emissions, which made such big news. Remember, when we all heard that Taylor Swift actually had the most emissions from her private jet, and there were a bunch of other celebrities on there, like Jay-Z, Travis Scott, Kim Kardashian, Floyd Mayweather, etc., etc. Mark Wahlberg was on there. I was really surprised. I thought I liked that guy. But anyway, we thought that why don't we take advantage of it? Because, we are opportunists, as we've told you before. So throughout June and July, it's actually reported that Drake's personal Boeing 767 had taken a 7-minute flight, a 12-minute flight, and a 14-minute flight. And all three of them took place between Toronto and some nearby city in Hamilton. What's more, this study also claimed that the 14-minute flight, it actually had used 1,613 liters of fuel and caused 4 tons of carbon dioxide emissions, which, by the way, The Guardian reports is equal to the global average annual carbon footprint for one person. Annual footprint. 14 minutes. Just gonna put that out there.
Damn, Drake.
Yeah, Drake. So what's really going on here, really, right? Celebrities, actually, all the shit that we give them, they only really contribute to about 2% of the emissions. And while private jet usage doesn't usually rank as highly as an emission source, let's say the beef industry or the American military, private jets, they feel particularly pointless and tasteless, right? The kind of private carbon indulgence that we ought to get rid of for ourselves, literally just based off on principle.
I do want to say 2% sounds like such a small number, but you do have to consider that a very few number of people are contributing 2%. 2% is a good number. You yourself as an individual, unless you are participating in activity like this, will never even touch 0.2%, let alone 2%. So if you pull back and look at it that way, then it's significant because these are individuals. They're not industries. They shouldn't be contributing that much.
Yeah, they're not industries. That's a very good point that you make, Ala. But honestly, let's be real. That's actually not the real problem, right? The problem here is that we consume and follow a lot of their lifestyles, right? Which means that they're not exactly climate conscious in their actions. And it's very hypocritical if you ask me, given how much they push for this climate change agenda and all of that, which sometimes I like it, but we'll get more into that. A 2017 review of the academic work that they did on this intersection that was published by Oxford University Press, they recount how famous people became central spokespeople in the fight to tackle climate change. Now, celebrities, they have spoken publicly about climate change for decades, right? But the research shows that they moved to the center of the effort to reduce emissions in the early 2000s. And there's a number of factors that actually explain why environmental groups increasingly sought out these celebrity endorsements at this time. For one, many climate policy efforts were lagging, and celebrities helped explain a seemingly wonky issue in a way that scientists couldn't connect to the general public. And so they bridged this gap that we really saw.
Kind of like this show, huh? We're bridging the gap for you guys right now, huh? We're relatable, aren't we?
Yes, we are very relatable. Please relate to us. Anyway, So the approach of partnering with celebrities also kind of like reflected the changing business of journalism, right? Like journalism kind of like centered really heavily on celebrities. And so they helped kind of like spread this climate news online, but it also grabbed the attention of print and broadcast journalists that were competing with the web. There was a study that was published in Social Psychology Quarterly, and it concluded that even if people do not identify with celebrities, these celebrities can actually influence their behavior by activating bundles of social norms. So if you begin to embrace these values of individual excessiveness and lack of moderation when it comes to burning of fossil fuels, this can really have some devastating consequences for the world that is around us. Also, the carbon footprints of these celebrities, they make us feel more discouraged about our own small ecological gestures, which kind of like feel minimal in comparison to their impact, right? Do you all remember Ariana Grande's steel straw and all of that? So, how can you really motivate yourselves to separate your recycling from your trash? That, oh, hey, I forgot to wash my yogurt thing before I put it into recycling, when you really know that these actions don't really chip away at the actual dent in the ozone layer that is caused by these celebrities. But this reaction can be very detrimental because it is proven that individual actions do matter and climate change can only be fought by collective action. And these people are sort of kind of spearheading these actions. So we need to talk about that. So Ala, what do you think about the celebrity culture influence, right? Like, what was your first impression learning that these people have more emissions on plane rides than some small countries do in a year? So what do you think?
Well, I do want to say something. It is true that collective action works, but collective action only works in the sense of involving industries and forcing patterns to change. To be honest with you, even though I take small actions in my life, I'm very aware of the fact that environmental activism and making choices that forces industries to respond is actually what makes the real change. I hate to tell it to you guys, even if everybody was like, oh, let's do our own little recycling on the side. If we didn't agree and force our city or something to have more recycling stations and things like that, then it doesn't translate as well. So it's important that you be vocal about your environmentalism, even though people might think, oh, this person is so annoying. It's fine. People find me annoying. It's fine. But as far as private jets, I just want to say we are not covering this, but I think we should all be looking at pastors. Because, girl, I know you're not a Christian, but I'll tell you this right now. We have a lot of pastors with a lot of private jets, and I think they contribute a lot, in my opinion. I don't have any numbers. I just think so. Second, I'm not surprised that we have private jets. And I don't know if I'd say it's fully hypocritical, because it's fair to think that there is a certain level of celebrity where you do need private travel. Because if Kim K was boarding at Delta or whatever, at Houston Hobby, people would flood the place. They would flood. And some people would miss their flights. Not me. Guys, I fly cheap, Spirit Southwest. Shout out to you guys. That's right. I fly Spirit, whatever. But someone else might.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they have $25 flights. Okay, guys, I'm not doing that.
Leave me alone, okay? I stick by Spirit. I ride for them. But I don't think it's entirely hypocritical. I just think that the way they use it, I mean, Drake, those short flights, Kylie, those short flights, it's unnecessary. And we need celebrities to continue pushing climate change as a topic because it brings visibility. It's necessary. I mean, Bill Gates has 2 private jets, and this man calls them his guilty pleasure, but he claims to be an advocate for climate change. That's that's not cool.
Can I just say, I read his book. He did say that he offsets them.
Yes, but I'm going to talk about offsets later. First of all, individual offsets, in my opinion, I think are a load of bullshit. I'm just going to say it. I have a lot of smoke for Bill Gates. But that being said, and I like all the stuff he does, it's just a lot of things he does are suspicious. Private terminals exist. Private charter airlines exist. These celebrities could fly in groups with other insanely rich people who don't give a shit about them, so nobody's mobbing them. They could use private terminals where they can do the security and the boarding and everything without anyone knowing. They can do what K-pop stars do and wear hats and masks and hide their face on the flight. Also, allegedly, Kim and Kanye used to fly commercial because people would see them and they'd take pictures, which is probably not helping, but I don't know what they do now. I know Chrissy Teigen also sometimes will fly commercial, fly American. And Tom Holland was filmed on TikTok just this year. Again, commercial. But you guys, stop filming these people on planes. If I was filmed and followed on a flight, airports and airplanes are so stressful, I'd be like, yeah, fuck this. I'm about to set up some contrails in this bitch. Get me a private jet. I mean, I'm not saying I would do that, but I'm saying I can understand someone wanting to do that. I don't care so much about what celebrities do, to be honest, because they get on my last nerve, unless when it's really funny. I have very low tolerance for their bullshit. But this is an important topic, and you guys cared about it on social media, so here we are.
I agree with you. If I was also being followed and every action of mine was being, kind of publicized and put on the internet, I understand that, but like Ala said, there are private charter planes. You can fly with other rich people. They will not take your pictures, okay? You are not special. You do not need to own a plane.
You can use private terminals and just no one will bother you till you get on the plane and you just get in your first class and you just avoid looking at people. Look at us, like celebrities are going to listen to this show.
Yeah. Well, I hope they do because they'll learn a thing or two.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so what, obviously all this backlash, celebrities definitely saw that and they had to respond because they had to keep connecting with their fans. So, just to give you some numbers before I get into what they were saying, in the first half of 2022, those 10 celebrities planes that, the list came out, they released a staggering 3,376.4 metric tons of carbon emissions. Just to give you an idea of how much that is, that's about 482 times more than the average person's annual emissions, according to Yard, which is a company that actually published this list. On July 30th, which is literally the day after the celebrity emissions list was published, Taylor Swift's reps responded to the criticism and they were kind of distancing the singer from responsibility. Yet, within literally 3 days of their statement, records showed that her plane had already emitted yet another 25 metric tons of carbon.
And the year is not over, people. The year is not over.
Yeah, we're only in September. We are still left with the last quarter, okay? Let's not ignore that. And Leo DiCaprio, our apparent hero for climate change, he made headlines this year for flying commercial to COP28, of course. He's very climate conscious.
Bigger news, he's dating a woman over 25.
Yeah. Actually, I think he flew commercial because he thought there were going to be women under 25 there.
These are jokes, guys. Allegedly. Look, Ajwa, these people are not like Sheen. They got time if they catch on to something. And if they don't got time, their stands have time.
Anyway, so he did ditch his private plane. In 2022, he rang in another climate calamity. He was aboard a luxury super yacht that generated an estimated of 7,018 metric tons of emissions per year. While he was on that yacht, by the way, he actually posted something on his social media about how we should all save the planet. Yes, Leo, we should all save the planet, including you, boy. I mean, man.
First of all, he'll take boy as a compliment, so chill. But I think that there is a cognitive dissonance where people don't realize the impact of their actions sometimes as they're doing them. And I say people, including myself. There are things we all do that we're like, later on, it's like, bruh, this is probably not good for the climate. But if you're going to be an activist for climate change, you have to be more conscious of your decisions. Don't get me wrong. I love a good boat party. Ask Ajwa. I love a good boat party. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. You guys should have been there for her birthday.
That TikTok of that girl says, I want to be in Dubai, shaking my ass on a yacht. I felt her. Yes, girl, in a thong. Okay, not in a thong. My mother listens to this podcast. But I'm just saying, I appreciate a good boat party, but still, we have to make better choices, okay? You think I don't want to be on a yacht? I mean, I have no money for it, but I'm just saying, still, we have to be more conscious. Leo.
So like Ala said about impact, right? We have to talk about their impact. According to scientists and experts under the Biden administration, every 1 ton of carbon literally costs $51, right? That's just like trying to give you how much it's going to economically cost you. Not even talking about what the impact is on the environment right now. We're going to get to that later.
And that is why I don't believe in offsets, because rich people can afford these offsets and they're not really offsetting shit half the time. I'm just saying, okay, I should rephrase. I believe in offsets, but they have to be very well monitored and well carried out.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you. And I don't think that even we're at this point in when it comes to like climate crisis, we're already at a point where I don't think your offsets are helping anymore.
Offsets are technically a form of mitigation, and they can, like carbon credits, offsets and everything, they can be helpful, but they have to be done through the right organizations. I think we talked about this when I talked about blue carbon policy, and people surprisingly liked the economic episode.
A lot of people like that.
But yes, the issue is the process with which it's done and who is monitoring those offsets. You can't just be like, bruh, I'm good. You know, I like donated the other day, or I'm good. I stopped showering for a week, so I can definitely go out here and just burn up the air. It doesn't work that way.
Or that you planted a tree because you wanted to plant an exotic tree in your hometown that died like 3 months. It didn't even get to the sapling stage. But if you think you offset that, you didn't, okay? Anyway, so when you talk about those $51, that means that we're all on the hook for more than $422,000, and that's just alone for Taylor Swift's jet setting in 2022 prior to July. So that's just like half of her year's jet setting, and we all, have to kind of pay with this one way or another. It's either dollar amount or it's going to be some people are paying with their lives with these climate crises, so we can't even ignore that. Another number, for every 4,434 metric tons of carbon that is produced beyond the 2020 levels, one person will globally die prematurely due to these extreme temperatures. And that's according to an analysis that was published in Nature Communications. That's an average lifetime's worth of emissions from 3.5 Americans, and still less than Steven Spielberg's 4,465 metric ton jet emissions so far just this year.
People are dying, Kim.
Yeah, but I better fly on my jet because I don't want people seeing me. I'm too special.
Oh boy.
But the study authors actually warn that this mortality figure may be actually a very vast underestimate, because it doesn't actually include climate-related deaths that are caused by floods, storms, or food shortages. And we know right now, just in 2022, how many deaths around the world have occurred because of these floods and storms and droughts and food shortages. And so, you know what? You are killing a lot of people globally. Your emissions are not going to stay in whatever country or whatever state that you think you live in. These are having global impacts. Like we talked about in literally our first episode of this series, Pakistan is a prime example of what is going to happen to smaller countries if we do not stop these global emissions.
So food shortages aren't the only problem. There's other things we have to think about. I mean, I don't know. I know, like, when we talk about stuff like this, first of all, the series comes off as very judgmental. And second, it does appear to when you initially start listening or reading the excerpts, it seems like such a first world / pastors, I'm going to call them out again, everywhere problem. It is important because it affects everyone. Just 1% of people cause 50% of global aviation emissions. That's too much. And Audra said, like, look at those numbers. That's just, when you think about the fact over 400 Americans cause equal damage as what these people have done in 2022 alone. And we all know that America is top 2 in carbon emissions. So it's not like we're using a conservative country's numbers in this situation when it comes to carbon emissions. It's something to think about, is all I'm saying. The whole world is paying for this. A report by the transportandenvironment.org found that private jets are 5 to 14 times more polluting than commercial planes. So it's true. We fly more commercial planes, but they also carry more people. That's the thing. It's the fact that a few people use this much. It's unnecessary. and they are also 50 times more polluting than trains. But we're talking about America here, and America does not have a lot of passenger planes. So we've covered the effects of rising emissions every chance we get. We mostly talk about CO2, so let's discuss some other stuff. First off, contrails. Contrails are human-made clouds. I'm not saying you guys don't know what that is. You probably do. But when air in the stratosphere is moist and it's colder than negative 40 degrees Celsius, which is also the same as negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the source of that air is above 25,000 feet, like, I don't know, in a plane, that's when you get contrails. Because what happens is airline exhaust is 30% water vapor. And when it's super cold up there, the vapor particles freeze instantly. And if it's also super humid, they expand. Then they form like clouds. And what they do is they trap infrared light up to 3 times more than CO2 can. CO2 is a problem, but, contrails are too. They wouldn't be so much a problem if there weren't so many planes up there, because they usually don't last long. And if they last long, it's usually up to 8 days. And that's in very specific conditions of extreme cold and humidity. But having so many planes, like I said, is what makes it such a situation. The other thing we're going to talk about are nitrous gases. On our ozone episode 37, we discussed nitrous gases, but I'm going to recap because I've been told I talked way too fast on that episode about way too much science. Although it's also a very popular episode according to our listens, so you guys need to make up your mind. I'm kidding. On its own, nitrous gases have the ability to both cool and warm the atmosphere, so they're very interesting that way. But when you look at the total chemistry, they end up having a net warming effect. Let me explain. First off, they tend to break up methane, which that's good because we know that methane is a major warming gas. So in that way, they're getting rid of methane, they're getting rid of that one warming gas, but they cause more damage in a different way. I'm going to explain this chemistry the easiest way that I can. All right? Strap in, everybody, Adjo included.
Okay, let's go.
So to start off, most of what you get is N2O. That is nitrous oxide. It has 2 nitrogens and 1 oxygen, and it is generally super chill and inert. That means it's unreactive down here in the troposphere where humans exist. So the troposphere is down here. The next layer of the atmosphere, the stratosphere, is up there. It's like old people who've been married forever. They have a routine, they read, they take walks, or they play golf. It just doesn't want anything to do with anybody. But then it gets into the atmosphere, and sunlight is present, and it's bright, and it's feeling itself. And the compound basically gets horny for oxygen because in reality, when you think about this, I don't know if you guys know this, but oxygen is the fuckboy of atmospheric chemistry.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh God, it tells everybody it's the one for them.
Elemental oxygen.
Ask nitrogen, ask sulfur, ask carbon. They all think oxygen is its soulmate. Oxygen soulmate is oxygen. It's O2, darlings.
I'm telling you, it's very much giving Adam Levine, allegedly.
You had to. You just had to.
I had to. I'm sorry. So single oxygen, which is found in the stratosphere, that elemental oxygen where it's just one O, not the O2, we don't have that in the troposphere. It makes chemistry love with the N2O, that's the nitrous oxide, and then they produce 2 molecules of NO, which is nitric oxide, for every love-making session that they have. You would think that would be enough. Like, okay, we've made NOs, like we're good. Wrong, because nitric oxide destroys ozone. Again, this single oxygen that is now paired with nitrogen is still unhappy, and it finds a polyamorous oxygen, which is ozone, that has 3 O's.
I am just loving this analogy, the whole thing.
I just feel like that was the best way to explain it.
Ala, great job.
And more chemistry love happens. So now you have 1 nitrogen dioxide, 1 N, 2 O's, and you have 1 happy oxygen compound, finally with 2 O's, and it can stop trying to get with everybody. But we need ozone. If we destroy ozone, we get more warming and we get skin cancer. So, of course, we have to talk about humans and animals and just everything else down here. After all this chemistry, we end up with nitrogen dioxide, which is bad. Why? After all this intense messy, complicated atmospheric sex chemistry, we get nitrogen dioxide. It's super stable, and it is the opposite of Adam Levine, allegedly. So it's not going anywhere. It smells awful. It comes down to the troposphere where we are. It is acidic, so, you get acid rain, which sucks for plants and aquatic life, and it is corrosive. So it's also bad for like your house and your cars. It's just not a good deal. It also is a major element of something we've talked about before on the show, photochemical smog. Listen to episode 28. You can learn more about that. But basically, it's smog. It's like that hazy stuff that you get. It's like partially yellow. It's why we have the Clean Air Act, kind of. It's why we have any air quality regulation, because English people almost died from smog. So high levels of nitrogen dioxide damage your respiratory tract, and they can increase your vulnerability to infections in your respiratory system, as well as asthma. If you're around it for too long, it can also cause lung disease. Smog makes it impossible to see and enjoy being outside, which is very important to both of us. It's not something we want, okay? Adjoa, can we do anything about this? I don't know. You tell us.
We can do something about everything, right? Well, mostly. But experts do agree that while, a blanket ban on private jets is really impractical, let's be real, we can implement an effective policy that would kind of diminish these emissions from private air. And that would be a very possible solution. And that is coming from David Cartucci, who was a former New York State Senator, and he's also a Green Amendment sponsor, and he's also a co-sponsor of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. So this guy knows what he's talking about, guys. And he also points that the actions that are taken by Canada as celebrities, Canada actually announced that they are going to have a Select Luxury Items Tax Act. And this policy will add a 10% tax to the purchase of items like private jets and yachts. And they believe that the tax will actually make luxury travel less attractive. It will kind of help lower carbon emissions from private aircraft. And after all, the trend of private jets is not going to end on its own. We do need some regulation there. So making consumers kind of pay for these habits and investing in raised revenues in electric travel and other alternate travel solutions, that could be an ideal solution. So there are things that we can do. We can regulate it. Ala, how can we regulate it?
All right. Speaking of regulation, not so hot, but the U.S. only started regulating airline GHG emissions in 2020 because the international aviation sector is actually exempt from both the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Climate Agreements. I will refer you to episode 36, but these are basically just things that countries really agree on when there are COPs to set standards for certain things, to keep it out of air and water and so forth. The new rule from the EPA aligns U.S. standards with the International Carbon Dioxide CO2 emission standards set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. These organizations. ICAO. ICAO. However, the average aircraft made as of 2016, the year that these ICAO standards were set, they already complied with requirements up to 2028. So, I guess. But then the EPA filed necessary legal stuff. They did a bunch of law to actually govern and litigate this rule in 2021. Like I said at the start of this episode, the Supreme Court did a whole thing about it. But we're back, baby. Biden is actually doing some work, so we're back, baby. Since the standards don't do much for real GHG emissions, at the time, 11 U.S. states and Washington, D.C. got really upset, and they came for the EPA and decided to set their own stricter guidelines. States can do this. The way the Clean Air Act and most other EPA pollution regulations work allow a state to go stricter on emissions, but not less strict. And California, I guess, is a good example of the state. In 2021, the California Air Resources Board approved a rule that will require fixed route airport shuttles serving the state's 13 largest airports to transition to 100% zero emission vehicles by 2035. And with the recent EPA win, where they're going to reduce carbon emission caps for states, I expect that California is probably going to double down somehow, but we'll see. The regulation applies to public and private fleets. It includes parking facilities, rental car agencies, and hotels. And even better news, like I said, just this August, it just happened and we're all still excited and I can't stop talking about it, but they finally approved $370 billion to decarbonize the U.S. economy, including funding to swiftly boost U.S. production of sustainable aviation fuel, which we love to see it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I know.
Did they make Joe Manchin sit this one out?
Oh God, please don't say that man's name around me. I don't want to go on like a swearing rant. My mother was very upset at the beginning of the London Smug episode. I want to give a shout out to United because they've been investing in SAFs for a minute now. As far as maybe like new stuff we can think about, I don't know about this expert solution sometimes. Like, I'm kidding. The experts know what they're talking about, guys. I do not do shit. But a new thing some of these jet companies are doing is they get their clients to offset and invest in sustainable aviation fuel.
I know, because now if you actually search your flight on Google Flights, it will tell you how much emissions, if you're picking a flight, maybe slightly more expensive, but it will tell you this many less carbon emissions and if you take this flight. And that's actually a really great tool for everyone to, kind of use when you're booking flights.
Yeah. And you can use that tool to do your own personal offsetting, if you will. Your own little thing that you want to try. Mm-hmm. Tracking offsets is difficult, and I've already explained why earlier. But for example, let's use this company called VistaJet. They're very popular. Since they introduced offsets to customers in January 2020 in partnership with South Pole, over 85% of their members have opted to invest in certified carbon credits.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what they put in their 2022 sustainability report. Projects funded include investing in cook stoves in China, in the Mamize Nature Reserve, where 5,000 carbon tons have been reduced. But this is what I'm saying about offsets. Apart from the tracking, you also see people invest in carbon credits that service an area that might not exactly be in their area or an area where you don't really need reduction sometimes. I'm not saying in this situation, but it's a thing. Like offset programs, somebody else has to use those carbon credits. We talked about the complicated nature of trading carbon credits on that Blue Carbon Policy episode. It's very good. You guys, I think it was 27 or something. I'm not sure. But yes, that's the issue. You know what I mean? There has to be a plan in place. However, nothing in the report from VistaJet, their sustainability report, provided numbers on the sustainable aviation fuel. They did not tell us how many people have invested in that yet.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. People claim that you can also use private jets for tests about green policies and fuels, and it can be a testing ground so we can use it that way. I guess, but I'm not sure that even that or luxury taxes will reduce private flight significantly. I'm just being honest. My biggest takeaway is I agree we can't ban them. And I do want to alleviate some of your climate anxiety that this episode may have caused and remind you that this is technically a smaller portion. The issue is it's just few people. And we also have to remember, once people start to make a little money, we look up to celebrities. That's just how human beings have been ever since they started getting popular, ever since we had black and white TV. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So people who might not even be as rich, like you see these influencers and stuff, might rent more private jet flights, and they're not flying in groups. I would say whenever I see celebrities flying in groups, like Chloe Bailey did that thing where they were all on a plane, I like to see that. I think that it reduces my climate anxiety somewhat.
And it's actually a solution, it's actually a very doable thing.
Yes. So will this problem get worse? It could. Does it destroy all of our efforts in raising climate awareness and trying to be better in our own lives? I don't think so. I can actually say with this one that I don't think everything the celebrities are doing with just private jets, I didn't talk about anything else, is canceling our efforts. I will say that. It's a problem, but it's not canceling our efforts. So where do you rank it, Adjoa? You tell me.
I think, like you said, and initially we even talked about numbers, it's a very small portion, but the impact we do believe is big. Because, like Ala said, even when you get these influencers, they want to now hop on private planes, and everybody's trying to do that because we do mimic celebrities a lot more than we think that we do, or a lot more than we even want to do, really. It's a thing. It's now It's a thing. So I think that while this may not be a big problem, I think that it can have implications that will be big and that are big, and we really need to address this. You know, like I said earlier, Ariana Grande has these straws, and a lot of people adopted that. So that
leave my ponytail princess alone.
But no, that's what I'm saying. It actually impacted a lot of people, took up these straws, these metal straws, because they agreed and they kind of like mimic that. And a lot of these celebrities do try to makes a difference.
We're getting older. We have to start thinking about our futures, okay? I am pushing 30. I'm pushing it very close. So we have to start thinking about our futures. Get ready for this, Adjoa. You are not going to believe my rank. I'm going to rank this my lowest rank of all time. A comfortable 6.3.
Well, Ala, I'm also going to rank this lower than my ever. And god damn with your 0.3. Bro. Like, get over this point shit. Who told you this was a decimal thing? Okay,
you never stipulated. I'm sticking with my decimals.
I'm sorry, I'm using the Excel format and your decimals are automatically removed. So she's calling it a 6. We do not count those 0.3s.
Adjoa, do not make me start to make this a 6.25.
Anyway, you're going to be surprised by this. I'm going to rank it a 5.
Oh, wow.
A 5.5. You know what? We're doing decimals now.
Look
I'm
at
doing a 5.5. And I'll tell you why. While all of that is very important, I think a lot of people do genuinely believe private jets are a little bit too out of reach. Even though there are companies that are now allowing you to go sit in a private jet that is parked in the hangar and take pictures in there.
Like,
sure, do that. You know what? That's not hurting anybody.
Yeah, it's not hurting anybody.
Except for, I don't know, whatever is happening on Instagram. You want to do that, do that. As long as that plane does not leave the ground, you're good. Don't turn it on. Sit in the heat. Okay, you don't need air conditioner. That is going to put out emissions. If you really want to do that for your Instagram page, you know what? Do it. I'll support you. You do you, man.
Okay.
But as long as it does not hurt people as you go up the socioeconomic ladders, your carbon emissions do go up. We should be very conscious about those. And we should actually always remember we have a lot of the poor who are suffering from these climate crises, I must say. So a 5.
Okay, Adjoa's point has been made. I just want to say, speaking of people struggling with climate crises, we're coming to the end, so we want to recommend an organization. Adjoa talked about the consequence of the climate crises, and right now, the people of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic are facing yet another intense and deadly hurricane. Over 700,000 people lost access to clean water in Puerto Rico, as just one example. A lot of people are without lights, electricity, homes are wrecked, roads are destroyed. You can see the pictures online. So here are some organizations helping.
Horrible.
Yeah, it really is. And I do want to say, if you choose to donate other ways, and not with these organizations we recommend, that's fine. Just be careful to make sure that you give directly to people working with victims. So Hispanic Federation has helped rebuild homes, health centers and farms, supply solar panels, and more with their community-based projects. They did this after Hurricane Maria, like there's proof, so you can trust them. And they're already on the ground in Puerto Rico. And we're going to be watching the Dominican Republic to see how things develop there. Direct Relief works in the U.S. and internationally to provide medicine and healthcare and doctors and nurses with medical resources. So they're very present in the Caribbean as well. They've been there helpful in the past. So again, an organization that I feel good about recommending. But thank you guys all for listening to this anxiety-filled but still very insightful episode. If you run a Stan account, make sure you're not supporting an asshole that flies 5 minutes instead of driving. And our hearts do go out to the victims of Hurricane Fiona. We love you guys. Please donate. And you guys, when we ask you to donate, we generally choose organizations that we donate to. So we're not just talking. Next week, we are discussing the effects of environmental decline on reproduction. You can ask Adjoa. I have been dying to do this episode. I'm going to say testicles so many times.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. So are air pollutants going to ruin my mother's dream of being a grandmother of many children?
Yes.
She will be joining as well. Oh my God. But follow us on Twitter at Planet Policy Pal. Guys, hit us up on Instagram at Planet Policy Pals. Or find us on Facebook by just the name of the podcast. Email questions and comments to planetpolicypals@gmail.com or hit us up in our DMs. Stay awesome, and until next time, keep learning, pals.